So this is now the time. If we are going to break this chain and we can go in the direction of countries that have been able to contain this and are now on the downhill of others like Italy, who lost another 349 deaths today on behind 386 yesterday. That is a country of a much smaller population, and those numbers are getting that high. So this is the time to do that. To date, we've declared peacetime emergency because of the pandemic. We temporarily closed schools, give administration time to plan. To protect the public's health and slowing, today I am issuing Executive Emergency Order 20-03. That would place partial closures of restaurants, bars, and establishments serving food and drink for dine-in services, as well as places of public accommodation and amusement during COVID-19 peacetime emergencies. Today's executive order will go into effect by tomorrow, March 17th at 5 p.m. and run through Friday, March 27th at 5 p.m. Examples of the closures are restaurants, food courts, cafes, coffee houses, and others that offer on-premises consumption. This does not stop takeout, curbside, or delivery. Bars, taverns, brew pubs, brewery, microbrews, tasting rooms, clubs, theaters, cinemas, museums, indoor-outdoor performance venues, gymnasiums, fitness centers, recreation centers, and so forth. Commissioner Malcolm will go into greater detail with this. This is all online for you to be able to look at the specifics around this. By issuing the order, we are enhancing mitigation measures to slow the spread. I want to be very clear. We are at a critical point here. If we get beyond that curve where community spread accelerates to the point that our hospitals can't keep up, that our respirators are not be able to, and some of the things that we need to get to folks, it becomes a really critical situation. And for us in Minnesota, I'm going to ask once again, we need folks' cooperation. To the young folks who are being told that, it's not that serious and it won't get to you, perhaps not for you, but that's not a given either, because we have young people that have found themselves needing hospitalization on this. We need to stop congregating. We're going to close the bars. We're going to close the restaurants. We're going to close the places where we gather. And understanding that this is the magnitude of what we're doing is not lost on any of us. The impositions that it will cause on people are not lost on any of us. And I have to tell you, it's one of the reasons why I have a second executive order that we're issuing today that will strengthen Minnesota's unemployment insurance trust fund and ensure establishments affected by this order will have benefits available. Commissioner Grove will talk about this. We will be spending the payments made by the employers. We will be using the unemployment trust fund and removing the wait period time on that so that benefits are delivered immediately. Minnesota has one of the most generous unemployment insurance programs in the nation, and our trust fund at this time is in solid place to be able to do this. That is the mechanism that we're going to ensure these workers, as you're listening today, for yourself, your friends, your family, and your neighbors. There is a safety net that comes along with this that will allow payment on those unemployment insurance immediately. We are going to make sure, and Commissioner Franz over at the Minnesota Management and Budget is shifting the state's workforce over to make sure that we're able to, and I think, again, to think about this, this will be the single largest request of unemployment insurance in Minnesota's history. Commissioner Grove will talk about this. It will certainly the biggest one-day influx that we have ever attempted to process. We understand the sense of urgency around this. I ask Minnesotans to bear with us, but to understand we're not coming in front of you making a closure without having the backstops in place to try and ease this. It will not make you whole. But our intention is to try and make sure that it does not destroy your family or the well-being that you have. So we will remain focused to committing the slow rate of transmission across Minnesota. It's going to take all of us. I want to reiterate before I turn it over to Commissioner Malcolm that we are keeping open grocery stores and pharmacies, encouraging them to stay open, understanding how difficult this is, both in an urban setting and in greater Minnesota. Those are going to be critical infrastructure for us to make sure that people are able to get what they need. I would reiterate what I said yesterday. Please understand that we believe that the supply chain systems are solid to our grocery stores. to our convenience stores that in many cases act as grocery stores in some of the areas where we have food deserts. But we need folks to be judicious about what they're purchasing, understanding that some people don't have the capacity to get it anywhere else. And I'll come back at the end, but I'll make that plea throughout this. This is an opportunity for Minnesotans to do what we do best. We step up in times of crisis for our neighbors. There are multiple opportunities to be able to volunteer. You're going to see these things start to step up, and there are going to be unintended consequences of social distancing that we're seeing. One of them that we're starting to see come up from the Red Cross is that blood drives are being canceled, even though those are safe and they're doing social distancing and we can do it. We may end up in a situation where we're going to have to ask Minnesotans in safe environments, protected from coronavirus, but still being able to donate blood for other needs that we have. Those types of things will go on as we move into the spring. We need to be prepared for mitigations against natural events, specifically flooding. So there's work to be done here. No one's going to do it alone. Minnesotans can do this if we step up together. Our commitment in state government with our private sector partners is to make sure that we're being as thoughtful with Minnesotan safety at our top priority. With that, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Malcolm to say a few words.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. As the Governor has just indicated, slowing the spread of COVID-19 is very important for Minnesotans and our communities, and we can all be a part of this response, and indeed we must. As we learn more about the outbreak, we continue to update our efforts and our guidance. I think the Governor has indicated this, as have I, that this is a fast-moving situation, and you can expect to hear additional information from us literally day by day, and our efforts literally are informed by changing circumstances hour by hour. Just Friday, we announced a broad set of community measures designed to limit the spread of COVID-19 by limiting opportunities for face-to-face contact. In line with our efforts to limit these gatherings that could lead to accelerated community transmission, we recommended to the Governor that restaurants and bars close for dine-in services at this time. As the Governor indicated, drive-through and takeout delivery can continue, and MDH recommends that restaurants focus on these services. Within restaurants, staff should try to keep at least 6 feet of distance from each other as much as possible. We understand that is not possible every moment. Staff should be aware of any symptoms they are experiencing and critically must stay home if experiencing symptoms. Orders should be sealed by restaurants in tamper-resistant packaging. For the safety of delivery personnel, restaurants should encourage contactless delivery, allowing no face-to-face contact between delivery personnel and customers. Payments should be made via digital means whenever possible, and if possible, orders should be dropped off at a designated spot with no face-to-face contact at a distance of at least 6 feet. As the Governor has also just reiterated, MDH strongly recommends, and we all want to help support grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores, and retail outlets that provide vital goods and services such as food, medicine, and essential supplies to remain open and to implement measures within those establishments to help promote social distancing. Social distancing should be encouraged within stores and at checkouts, and signage reminding people of the importance of distancing at least 6 feet apart. All this should be posted and reinforced among staff and patrons. When possible, delivery of items using the same safety steps I just noted for restaurants, online ordering and pickup should be encouraged over in-store shopping, especially for those Minnesotans who may be at higher risk, as we have discussed multiple times. Furthermore, MDH recommends venues such as movie theaters, bowling alleys, and other recreational activities close at this time. We recommended that to the Governor, and he has included that in his executive order. We recommend that public buildings do remain open, and this includes libraries, so long as they can maintain social distancing of at least 6 feet between people. This guidance is effective starting by the close of business tomorrow, but we strongly encourage folks to start paying attention to this guidance right now and to avoid gathering in bars and restaurants as soon as they can. But the guidance is effective beginning end of day tomorrow through March 27th. And at the end of that time, we will reassess to see if this closure order can be lifted or if it should remain in place. With Minnesota now having 54 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 3 of which we believe to be associated with community spread, it is time to take these actions in order to flatten the outbreak curve so that we can avoid overtaxing our healthcare system beyond the point that they can function. You can find more information about this latest guidance, as well as many other recommendations on social distancing, on the MDH website. I will now turn it over to Commissioner Grove and anticipate your questions.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Malcolm, and hello, everyone. We know this announcement affects all Minnesotans, and in particular, it affects the hundreds of thousands of workers at bars, restaurants, and the other establishments that the governor has announced will be temporarily closing today. We also know that this industry is really one of the cultural cornerstones of our state's economy, and that we are truly grateful for all that you do to make Minnesota a wonderful place to come together and enjoy each other and our state. And we appreciate you working with us as we take these measures, and we know we'll all be doing that again in the future when this crisis passes. Given these unprecedented times, we want to do everything we can to help the hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans who will be affected by these temporary closures. And the most immediate lever that we have to address this crisis is the state's unemployment insurance program, which is making significant preparations to meet the needs of Minnesotans who will be laid off due to the COVID-19 crisis based on the announcements that are coming today. The state employees that work in the unemployment insurance program at the Department of Employment and Economic Development are working tirelessly to extend our hours, to handle increased call volumes, and to look for creative ways to handle an influx of applications to that site. I want to thank those employees in our unemployment insurance program. We know you're working hard. We truly appreciate your hard work. I particularly want to thank our UI director, Jim Hegman, who has been a steady hand throughout this all as the UI program prepares for an increase in activity. But preparation alone is not enough. Current UI law was not written to handle extraordinary times like these, which is why that executive order the governor mentioned a moment ago is necessary. And I just want to walk through a little bit of the details of that order so that we all understand what it contains. It is Executive Order 2004, and it is making adaptations to UI's law to cover a pandemic. It suspends the current rules of Minnesota's unemployment insurance program to offer immediate support to those who are affected by the temporary closure of the bars, restaurants, theaters, museums, fitness centers, community clubs, and other spaces. In particular, it suspends the waiting week for unemployment insurance that will allow workers to take advantage of those benefits right away after they need to take advantage of UI. It also ensures that we make unemployment insurance benefits available to anyone whose health or the health of their loved ones is affected by this crisis. And it clarifies that you can access unemployment benefits if you are quarantined or self-isolated as a result of COVID-19. So the workers who are affected by today's executive order to close down those businesses the governor mentioned, you may be eligible for UI. You probably are eligible for UI, and you should go to uimn.org and apply. The EO also addresses the issue of childcare, which I know is on the minds of so many Minnesotans right now. I know my wife Mary and I are thinking about this a lot for our 2-year-old twins as our childcare situation has shifted drastically, and that's true for so many Minnesotans. So if you are a parent who is experiencing childcare challenges due to the closure or cancellation of childcare facilities, you are eligible to receive unemployment benefits while you are away from work. So again, please do go and apply. The order also addresses the needs of businesses, as the governor mentioned, who pay the taxes that make this whole system run. We don't want those businesses to be adversely affected by this crisis. So we are suspending the employer surcharge for employers to pay into that unemployment system for the duration of this executive order. So this will provide some fast relief to businesses who need it most during this time. Now, I want to make a very important point to everyone who is going to be looking at applying for unemployment insurance benefits in the coming days. It is critical that you use our website. I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. It's uimn.org. Our call centers are simply not set up to handle the call volume that we expect could come in based on this executive order, and we need to reserve those call lines for folks who don't have access to the internet or don't speak the languages that are available on our public website interface, those ESL applicants. So please, again, if you are applying for unemployment insurance, go to the website uimn.org to do so. We're also expanding the hours that our website will be available. It is currently able to accept applications Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're working right now to add Sunday hours. And I would just say this, we would ask for everyone's patience as the team scrambles to do everything we can to make this system work in these trying times. We have a great team in place that's working very, very hard, and we'd appreciate everyone's patience as we make these developments. Now, we know unemployment insurance alone isn't the only tool that's going to be needed during this crisis. It is a start. We are continuing to look at other solutions at the federal and state level. One that I did want to point out today is the federal government's Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Program, which we're continuing to get more guidance on by the hour from the federal government. We are working closely with the SBA and the business community and local partners to ensure that Minnesota businesses are eligible for that program. It will provide loans at a low interest rate for businesses that experience economic injury as a result of this crisis. We'll have additional guidance on that in the coming days, and we believe that funding will be available within the next couple of weeks. So more to come from us there. Lastly, I'll just say this. These are unprecedented times, and I think you're seeing today an unprecedented response. And we would just ask the business community, many of whom we've spoken over the past few days, to continue to collaborate with us, to be creative, to look for solutions. We have been impressed and inspired by the civic backbone and call to action that I think our business community and our workers have felt during this times of crisis. It really is a chance for all of us to come together and ensure that our economy can weather this time and make Minnesota better for everyone in the future. So with that, I want to bring up one of those business leaders who's here to join us today, one of Minnesota's most well-known restaurateurs, Andrew Zimmern. Andrew?
Thank you, and thank you, Governor Walz. We're in a crisis. The restaurant and the food industry is in the same place. Like others around the world, we are realizing that we need to take drastic measures to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus and flatten the curve. Those measures will mean a greater percentage of people will survive this viral pandemic. Reducing gathering spots will help with containment, and hopefully real plans and real leadership, like the ones taken by our governor, civic leaders, will also restore confidence in our markets and institutions and ultimately get us back on our feet sooner. We cannot pretend that this real world crisis is not happening. Restaurants and bars are closing all around the country, some by mandate, some by choice. Service industry workers are losing their jobs. Small business owners are facing bankruptcy. Paid leave is being taken seriously in our industry for the first time. And in a state, like all the others, with food security issues, closings of restaurants and schools means a loss of access and meals for many Minnesotans. And still, these closures are the right thing to do in the interest of the public health. The hard choices now speeds resolution further downstream. Additionally, I feel we need to ultimately address the needs of hundreds of thousands of restaurant, hospitality, and leisure entertainment workers here in Minnesota. Traditionally, these industries employ the largest percentages of single parents, returning citizens, transient workers, and immigrants, especially new immigrants. Young people most often find their first job in the hospitality industry. Paid leave, health insurance, and saving plans have been historically lacking in our industry. Crisis organizations like Second Harvest here in Minnesota are struggling to deal with the waves of fear gripping this vital and beloved industry. Right now, many can't pay staff, rent, property, and other taxes, and of course, can't do that at all when there is no business. Fall off has been anywhere from 50 to 90% for restaurants, and that was over a week ago. Restaurants everywhere, including here at home in this state, have seen resources evaporate over the last month because hospitality folks all want to help. We all got into this business because of the magic that we know that happens when people share food with each other at our tables. Nobody wants to close, but we know that we must. Food people understand the greater good. We were first responders to 9/11, Katrina, and every disaster since. We always have been. So every restaurateur, chef, server wants to be the last one out the door. But the reality is that the public health needs to come first. That being said, I know that our food community stands ready to help. If we need to turn our restaurants into community food centers via public and private partnerships, we're ready for that. And I can speak for my organization that we will do everything that we can to facilitate any help for any and all Minnesotans whenever our civic leaders call upon us to do so. My heart breaks as I read letter after letter from chefs and restaurateurs across our state and country expressing the same ideas. We do need everyone to help. We need government bailouts of our industry, beginning with eviction protection, rent and tax alleviation, assistance for those without paid leave or health insurance. Help with loans for businesses and individuals should be on the table precisely because these restaurants employ so many, but also because they are small, consumer-facing businesses without cash reserves. We need to make sure that when this pandemic is finally over, and it will be over, that we have restaurants that can reopen. The harsh reality is that most won't. The food world is the vital cultural fabric holding us all together. I have spent 30 years preaching that message. What does a Minnesota without restaurants, food service, and a hospitality industry look like? We need to bathe this industry in dignity and respect as we close our doors and provide all our assistance when the time comes as we reopen them. Thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Stephanie Shimp.
Thank you, Andrew. We are in unforeseen times. I started my business when I was 21 years old, and I can tell you that even the great University of Minnesota didn't teach a course in how to respond to coronavirus or a pandemic. We are relieved. Thank you, Governor. We are relieved to be here with you and to stand with you in this time of crisis and to know that we can keep our employees safe. We spent all weekend formulating plans, talking about whether or not we would go to takeout or to delivery. How can we both keep our employees safe and our guests safe, but do what's right for the community? And this is one of those times when we can do more by doing less. And it's really hard for someone like me in hospitality to say, stay home. But this is a time to cook meals at home and to be with your family and to do everything we can to help those in healthcare and to flatten the curve and to keep the hospital beds open for those who really need it. We hope to be here as an industry when all of this passes, and we'll be stronger than ever. And our restaurant community knows how to band together, and we know we can get through this if we all just stay home. Thank you, Governor, for doing this, and especially in light of St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, I encourage all of you, if you can do this today, tonight, do it now. The sooner we can all stay home, the better it will be for all of us. And now, John Puckett from Punch.
Thank you, Stephanie. The human dimensions of this are something I want to talk about, that we've been so sad as a company. My background is my wife and I started Caribou Coffee here about 30 years ago and built that company to about 100 stores. And then the last 20 years, I've been building Punch Pizza with my business partner who founded it. Today, we were on a phone call with our employees, and we had to let over 400 people know that we're having to temporarily close our company through no fault of their own. This is a virus that's an unseen enemy that's rapidly growing, and for the good of our community and the safety of our employees, it's better that we all hunker down and protect our vital healthcare resources so more damage doesn't happen in our community. We are going to reopen. We're going to have a bright future, but the next 2 to 3 to 4 months are going to be very difficult, and we were very frank with our employees and management team about that. The restaurant business is a business that we spend 40 cents on the dollar on labor. We employ a lot of people per dollar of sales, I think more than any other industry. So we're really going to be affected. And I really thank the governor for taking leadership on this. We have a lot of employees listening to this tonight and are reading about it tomorrow. And getting immediate unemployment insurance will really help them make the rent payments, make sure their family has food. And it's just a really terrible tragedy that we're all going through. We made the decision to close over the weekend after we had a couple of false, it ended up being false reports, but potential contacts of our employees with the person that initially was thought to have the coronavirus. It turned out not to be true. And we didn't think it was possible to continue operation with increasing virus spread in a tight restaurant environment. So for the sake of the public, we think it's in the best interest of all that, again, we stop operation and we make sure that the health professionals can do their job and not get overwhelmed. Thank you.
I want to thank all three of you on behalf of Minnesota. This representation that you just heard of people who have poured their entire lives into creating not just an industry, as they said, a social fabric that sets Minnesota apart, and to hear them speak about putting the greater good and protecting our incredible healthcare assets, that's what Minnesota is asking for. That's what Minnesota needs. Your leadership at this critical time will not be forgotten. It sets an example for so many. And for those of you listening, I think the magnitude is starting to come home. 900,000 students were sent home. Several 100,000 of your neighbors were just laid off. An entire industry has been shut down in the face of this, all for the greater good. And as we triage this, and as we bend this curve, and as we keep our neighbors safe, I do think it's important. We're getting through this, and we're coming out the other end. And there's an opportunity here for us to do what Minnesota does, come together. These industries are going to need to be protected. These industries are going to need to, as we talk about it, ways that we can get together. And it's going to take public-private partnerships, if you heard, and it's going to take political will and political collaboration. And I hope that we all are seeing this. That's exactly what's happening in Minnesota. I met earlier today with all of the leadership in the House and Senate, and there is a sense of camaraderie and spirit and oneness about getting this right that I'm not sure. Maybe some of us who are serving or saw the time after 9/11 where this country came together and can see a lot of good. We can do that in this. I would echo the message that Stephanie put out. Do this as quickly as possible. I'm not naive, and I send a message to Minnesotans. Please don't go out for one more time to crowd the bars before they close. We've thought about everything. Don't make a rush if you can on the liquor stores, whatever it might be, to create situations. Do these things in an orderly manner. Understand that this is a short-term time that we're asking you to sacrifice for the greater good. Understand where folks are at on the other end of this, where our neighbors are going through. And so we get an opportunity here to implement this now in an orderly fashion, bend this curve, keep these precious resources in the hospitals ready to function, and get on the other side of that.